Hey everybody, it's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions, and my first question this week comes from Gurin Prime, who says, "Hey Steve, a lot of atheists say that they'd believe in God if they had good evidence, but in my opinion, there can never be good evidence for the supernatural. After all, significantly advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and significantly advanced aliens are indistinguishable from gods. To me, science we don't understand is much more likely than magic or miracles, and aliens are much more likely than gods. So I feel no matter what evidence is provided for God, it'll still be irrational to believe it over a naturalistic explanation. Your thoughts?" I agree with you that no matter what, a natural explanation will always be more plausible. And one of my big practical reasons for believing that is just the sweep of human history. Every time we have made a new discovery, we have come to some new explanation of a phenomenon, no matter how incredible and astonishing it may have seemed before we figured out what was going on. It has always been a natural explanation. It has always been reducible to physical, to scientifically understandable natural forces. So I agree with you that the obvious explanation, or not, maybe not even the obvious, but the best explanation will always most likely be the natural one. Having said that, I have said before, I've said many times, that I would believe in God if there were sufficient evidence. And I've even said that I've gone so far as to describe it in terms like my naturalism is falsifiable. If you show me real good evidence of a supernatural cause, then my naturalism is out the window. I will accept that the supernatural exists and has some role to play. When I say that, we usually, and people will comment and disagree with me or voice an alternative point of view. Usually it degenerates very quickly, and I use the word degenerates in the kindest possible way, because these are always like very genial conversations. But it always gets down into an argument over terms, and to me becomes just a semantic argument that I don't find that interesting. What I mean to say is, if God is a real thing, and there is ever evidence that compels me to believe that God is the most likely explanation for this evidence, I will believe that God exists. You're right that the evidence would have to be something. The evidence would have to be incredible in order for me to accept God as opposed to some incredible technology or alien or whatever. I mean, you're absolutely right. The natural explanation should always take precedence over the supernatural. It would take amazing, unprecedented evidence. But hypothetically speaking, I think that evidence, if it were there, it would compel me to believe in the supernatural. It would compel me to believe in God. And when we get into this natural and supernatural business, what we're basically saying, because people have said, well, if we found evidence that God existed and God was real, wouldn't we just expand our definition of natural to include God? And then God would no longer be supernatural, he would be natural. He would be just a part of reality. And that might happen, or we might also redefine our concept of the natural to say, well, anything that is natural is that which occurs according to the natural laws of our universe. We'll look at our universe as sort of like a closed system that operates according to set rules, and anything that happens according to those rules or is allowed by those rules is natural. Anything that occurs that is that would normally be considered prevented or impossible by those rules we'll consider supernatural. So we would redefine terms, we would change our concepts around a little bit to accommodate the new truth that we have established. But the most important point to me is I would believe in God if there was evidence. Now, it's very hypothetical, it's open as to what that evidence could even be, but the concept is, the principle is, I would believe in God if there were evidence. Now, what that means for our concepts of naturalism and the supernatural and all the philosophical implications of this and how we would have to redefine terms in the wake of such an astounding discovery, these are all arguments that we would have to have and discussions we would have to have and things we would have to decide after the fact. The main point to me is, regardless of the implications for naturalism, supernaturalism, whatever, if there was evidence for God, I would believe that God existed. That's all it takes is evidence. Troubleshooter 125. Steve, do you remember what your first exposure to comics was, and particularly your first exposure to Batman, since that is clearly a fave of yours? What was it that really sunk the hook for you back then, or did it take a while to pique your interest? I'm pretty sure that my first exposure to Batman, which was also my first exposure to superheroes and to comics, although comics indirectly, it was a little while after that before I read like a proper comic book, but my first exposure to Batman and through him to comics was probably the Adam West TV show. It was in reruns, of course, by the time I came around. But I remember very, very clearly being maybe 4 or 5 years old and seeing that show aired in reruns in the afternoons on some local TV station when I was growing up. That was probably my first exposure. And then very, very soon after that came like the Saturday morning cartoons like Super Friends, which when I was getting into it was had become the Superpowers show. And getting those toys, like my first Batman action figure was a Superpowers action figure. My first Superman action figure was a Superpowers action figure. So it was a combination of the Adam West show and the Superpowers show. And I don't think I read a comic book, like a proper comic book, for a few years after that. I didn't like get right into comics after I saw Batman. And actually, I mean, you're right. I'm a huge Batman guy now, and if I had to choose like my favorite superhero character, I would choose Batman without having to think about it too hard. But I went through like a phase as a kid where I really, really strongly preferred Superman. And I remember, I think it was when I was about to start first grade, I had asked my mom, because she was going school supply shopping, and she wanted to get me a backpack, a book bag. And I asked her for a Superman book bag. And I had seen one in Kmart that I thought was perfect, you know. And I was like 5 or 6 years old. And I said, I said, give me the Superman book bag. So Mom goes to the store that day, and I went and did something with my grandparents or my dad or something. And I came home later in the day after Mom had been to the store, and she said, well, okay, look, here's the deal. They didn't have the Superman book bag that you wanted, but I got you something that's just even better, even cooler than Superman. And I was like, oh shit, okay. I went into my room, and there on my bed was a Batman book bag. And I hated it. And I threw the biggest fucking little boy tantrum you ever saw. I fucking yelled and cried like the most entitled little fucking prick you ever saw. I screamed and hollered, I wanted a Superman one! I didn't want a Batman one! I wanted a Superman one! I mean, it was epic. I completely lost my shit over the Batman backpack. And she, you know, I don't know if I would say to her credit or not, but my mom caved and went back like the next day or something and got me the suit, took the Batman one back and traded it in for the Superman one. And I got the Superman backpack. So let that be a lesson to you, young children who are watching this, 5 and 6 years old. Just throw a tantrum and you'll get whatever you want. But I look back on that now, thinking being such a Batman fan, thinking, wow, that's hilarious that I was like a 5 or 6 year old kid, and I lost my shit over getting a Batman book bag instead of a Superman book bag. You know, I don't know. As to what appealed to me about the character, like back when I was a kid, I guess it was just the purity of like the guy dressing up in the costume and, you know, the fact that he didn't have superpowers, but he was still able to do all these incredible things, and he had gadgets. I think when you're a kid, I think the thing that attracts you to Batman, or at least the thing that attracted me to Batman, is the gadgets. He has all these toys. He has batarangs. He has a belt with all sorts of goodies on it. He has a cool car and a plane or whatever, depending on what version of the character you're getting into. There's just all this cool gadgety stuff that Batman has. It really appealed to me as a kid. And Superman, even though Superman was awesome, and obviously I was very into Superman when I was a certain age, and I'm very into Superman now, He's just basically Superman. You know, he doesn't have a cool car, he doesn't have a plane, he doesn't have any weapons or tools. He's just super, and that's just his deal. Whereas Batman has all this extra stuff that you can sort of glom onto. So maybe that was it. I don't know. Nowadays, I would say it's about the character and the psychological stuff and the blah, 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 blah. But none of that mattered to me when I was 5 years old. It was probably more about the gadgets. After I got past my screaming, tantrum-throwing Superman phase, that is. Cyril B. Hey Steve, recently a friend and I were having a light debate about philosophy, science, and religion. I said I personally think that in modern society, philosophy is largely useless unless the question at hand has scientific application. But in the past, before science was really a thing, philosophy gave rise to many questions that were later answered by science. She said that she thinks science tells you what is and philosophy tells you what ought to be. I kind of disagreed with the last part of her statement, but went on to say that you could say the same thing about religion. Science tells you what is, and religion tells you what ought to be from the eye of the beholder. She disagreed with me, saying that religion is set in stone, so to speak, and has nothing to do with the eye of the beholder, as their doctrines are so old. So I went on to point out that there are so many different religions to choose from, and so many different sects or denominations of each religion that are incompatible with one another to choose from, that you don't technically have to start your own religion in order for it to conform to your personal belief system. You just have to shop around for one that suits you best. What is your personal take on the usefulness of philosophy in modern society? I think philosophy is invaluable, but I do think that philosophy, in order to be valuable and to be useful to us, must be subordinate to science. I think philosophy is how we figure out what we think about the things that we know. And science is how we learn things, is how we get the things that we know. And I think you have to have the scientific knowledge or the knowledge derived through the scientific method, through scientific processes, before you can ask your philosophical questions about. You have to start with the empirical. You have to start with the evidence, with the experience, with the facts, with your experience of reality. And then you add philosophy on top of that, and you try to decide, okay, well, what do I think about this? What do I feel about this? What does this imply? What's the meaning of this? What's the purpose of this? I do think there is a distinction between philosophy and religion. I think religion can be considered a form of philosophy in many cases, but good philosophy is based on reality. Good philosophy is based on reason and on science and on facts as the bedrock that it then builds upon, and religion for the most part isn't. And that's, religion would be considered philosophy, but I would call most religion bad philosophy. Susan Martin. Hi Steve, I love your videos. I have a serious question for you. What is your opinion on abortion? I know a lot of atheists tend to be pro-choice, but I think it should be considered more than just a black or white issue. I certainly don't want to take away that choice for someone who is in an unavoidable or unfortunate situation, but I find the language feminists use when talking about either a zygote or later a fetus is intentionally misleading. I also find it troubling that half the women who have an abortion will have at least one more in their lifetime. I understand this is a complicated issue. Personally, I'd like to see more education about actual fetal development, and women should be informed about the development of her fetus before abortion, perhaps by a sonogram. I'd also like more personal responsibility encouraged. I mean, this is a human life, organism, and I think it deserves some consideration. It had no choice in who its mother was, and no choice but to depend on her for its life. I support keeping abortion legal. I think that should be an option that a pregnant woman and her doctor are allowed to pursue if they both decide that's what they want to do. I'm even a little squeamish about the idea of there being such a thing as like an abortion clinic. Like there's a special place that you have to go to get an abortion. Like other doctors, other obstetricians, etc. just won't do it. I feel like that's a little strange. I think it should be treated as a medical procedure, and one that women decide to get if they and their doctor reach a consensus that this is the best thing for them to do. I'm with you on not wanting it to be a black and white issue, however. My whole thing with the abortion issue is I accept the fact that I am a man and I will never be pregnant. So because of that, That is an experience I will never have. That is a situation I can say confidently I will never be in, and it's a choice that I will never be faced with. To me, it makes no sense, and it makes me very uncomfortable to even think about imposing what I would do on a person in that situation, because what I would do is completely irrelevant, because I'm never going to have to do it. I've never been in that situation, and I never will be. I am also, like I think you are, judging by your question, a little squeamish at times when I think about it, about the idea of ending a life for the convenience of another person, of aborting a child or a fetus, whatever you want to call it, because it just didn't work out. It's just not the best time for the people who are already here. I completely understand that feeling. I get that. I don't think we should treat it as a black and white issue. I do think the legality of it should be a black and white issue. I think I'm unequivocal about the fact that I do think that it should be a legal, available option for people. There's not even a little tiny part of me that thinks we should make it illegal. Not even a little. In that sense, I'm black and white about it. But in terms of how I feel about it, yeah, there is a lot of gray area there. And that's why I think it should be a decision that is taken not lightly, but that is taken seriously by the pregnant person and by that pregnant person's physician. Robert Fuller, what do you think about Cy ten Bruggencate challenging Matt Dillahunty to a debate? Do you think Matt should give him the attention? What tips would you have for Matt in dealing with someone as frustrating and dishonest as Cy? My honest advice to Matt would be to get a little drunk beforehand and just go in and have a good time. If his experience with Cy is anything like my limited experience with Cy, you're not going to have a debate. You're not going to have anything close to an adult conversation. You're going to try your best to not allow him to blatantly maneuver you into the spot he needs you to be in order for him to make his next argument. The thing about Cy that makes him so inept and yet so impenetrable as a debate partner, as a debate opponent, is that the guy really, he has one act. And he knows that act by heart. And he can't deviate from that act. He knows all of like the different multiple choice responses that you could give and what he has to do in response. It's a very, very intricate web of shit that he has built up, but it's all just one act. And he can't do anything other than that. And he's going to do that act. Like if you go on Cy's show or he does a debate with you or whatever, he has his act that he is going to do, and God damn it, it's just going to happen. And there's nothing you can do about it. And he will stonewall you, and he will stall, and he will ask you the same question over and over again all fucking day. He does not care. He just wants to get his shit in. So my advice to Matt is just go with it and just have a good time. And don't have any illusion that you're going to accomplish anything. And the thing about Cy, giving him the attention, the more attention Cy gets, the worse it is for Cy. There is definitely a saturation point with him where beyond that, the attention becomes negative. I understand that he's a bit of a fame whore. He's a bit of a star fucker in the atheist community. He wants to get on the Atheist Experience because that is a show that the atheist community and the internet, we all watch it from time to time. We all know who those guys are. And he wants to get his voice in that forum, and he wants to raise his profile, to expand the awareness of his brand, of the Cy ten Bruggencate Traveling Roadshow. But the more people, the more eyeballs he has on him, and the more exposure he gets, and the more people see him repeatedly, the more it becomes apparent to a larger audience that he just has nothing. He has no argument, and he has one act, and that's all he can do. So the more attention he gets, the worse it is for him, and the worse it is for the presuppositional argument that he makes. So I don't have a problem with him getting the attention. On Cy's part, I think it's a little sad. I mean, anytime, look, Matt Dillahunty made like a 3 or a 5 minute video just responding to the issue of whether or not Cy challenged him to a debate or whether or not he was ducking Cy or whatever. It's stupid, petty drama bullshit that nobody really probably cares about. But Matt Dillahunty did like a 5 minute video about it. And Cy responds with a video that was 3 times as long. That to me, and just picks over every little detail. And he's like, oh yeah, Matt, well, if that's the case, then what about this? And he plays some clip from like 3 years ago. That to me tells me everything you need to know about Psy. That's the kind of guy that you're going to be dealing with. So Matt, if this ever happens, if he calls in and you work out a time, hey, here you go. My brand is Yingling, but whatever brand is your favorite, have one of these or do whatever else you do to chill out if you're not an alcohol guy. And just chill out and just get loose and have a good fucking time. Because it's not going to go anywhere. And if you let him control the conversation, you let him just talk and talk and talk, it's going to keep going until somebody gets struck by lightning. And then it's going to... That one wasn't as smooth as last week's segue, was it? I don't know. Anyway, you know what the sound means. It means that it's now time for...
The Lightning Round. Rapid fire questions. Glib and adequate answers.
Atheist Bob. Hello, Steve. Sprechen Sie Deutsch? Ich spreche ein wenig Deutsch. I'm not even sure if that's how you pronounce that correctly. I was trying to say I speak a little German. I don't know if that's my pronunciation is terrible. I took like 2 years of German in college. I have very little recall. Der Wunderbar Bar. What do you think about The Killing Joke? Personally, I think it's one of the best, if not the best, Joker-Batman stories around. I agree with you. I think The Killing Joke is the best Batman-Joker story there is. Not just for the script by Alan Moore, which was terrific, but also Brian Boland's art is fantastic. A great comic book. E. Burwell. I've considered what my last words might be. Slipping off this mortal coil comfortable in my bed. That was nice. In service to the protection of others. You'll be safe now. Facing a cataclysmic event, hopefully far away, to say, what the fuck was that? My least preferred. Oops! Have you considered what you'd want your last message to the world to be? Not really. I do know that if I did know that like the end was coming and I was like, you know, I could just sense it imminently closing in on me, I would kind of like, just for the sake of my appreciation of like of just cheesy bad movies and you know, ironic humor, I would love for it to be something like not like this. Wouldn't it be awesome if my last words were not like this and then I died? That'd be great. Charles Sutherland, lightning round question. Buffy or Angel? Angel. Warp rules. Two closely related questions. I've noticed that in the past 10 or so years, there has been an abundance of remakes and reboots of old and even not so old movies, a lot more than in past decades. Do you think this is because we are finally running out of ideas and need to rehash old ones, or is there some other reason for this? Also, does it bother you that every single time they remake a superhero movie, they have to retell the origin story? Personally, I'm sick of seeing the same origin stories retold again and again. Why not simply treat the world as the superheroes just existing? Skip the boring stuff and go right to the fun stuff. We already know where the superheroes came from. We don't need to see it again. Well, the reason why they're doing so many remakes and reboots, it's not that they're running out of ideas, it's that big Hollywood studios are lazy and incredibly risk-averse, and they would rather just do something that has been established and proven to be potentially profitable instead of take a chance on something. And I am with you 100% on origin stories. I've said this before in previous videos. I would declare a moratorium on origin stories. If I never see another superhero movie that tells the origin story of the character, especially if it's like a well-known character like Superman or Batman or Spidey or something, I never want to see that again. Just tell me a fucking story. I know who Spider-Man is. I know who Superman is. I know how he got the fucking powers. Just tell me a story with the guy. I don't care about the origin. I've seen it. Appleseed XT. Hello, Steve. I've listened to you talk about several things you like and dislike in many subjects, like movies, books, politics, but I've never heard you say something related to music, with the exception of your guilty pleasure about Michael Jackson. So what's your favorite genre of music you like to hear, and what kind of music makes you feel the need to hurt somebody? Music I like is actually a really broad cross-section. I like all kinds of music. Some of my favorite artists, I mean, I love Bruce Springsteen, I love Johnny Cash, I love blues music. There's a blues duo that were from around the Washington D.C. area that I discovered about 10 years ago called Cephas and Wiggins that I just love. I love a lot of old blues. I love like John Lee Hooker, and I love old like 60s R&B like Sam Cooke, things like that. A lot of music. There's just a lot of music. I love classical music. I love country music from maybe pre-1980 or so. I love Nico Case. I love Amy Mann. I don't know. There's a lot of music that I really like. As for music that makes me want to like punch a wall, the only two genres that I could just feel comfortable completely writing off are contemporary Christian and mainstream like pop country music. Like modern pop country music just makes me want to gouge my eyes out and puncture my eardrums. I hate that music so much.
And Meatloaf.
And my lovely wife helpfully adds Meatloaf.
He is a category.
Yes.
Unto himself.
She likes Meatloaf. I despise him and everything he stands for. Cranky Cranky Smurf. Would you ever consider moving to Canada? Yes. If Canada would maybe relocate to a temperate zone. Maybe not the tropics, but maybe just a little closer. If Canada and South Carolina could switch places, could switch latitudes, I would love to move to Canada. Nathan Young, Steve, with all the videos you are always writing and recording, do you ever even leave the house anymore? You know what, Nathan? I left the house today, man. I left the house today before I even shot this. You got to leave the house at least to go get groceries. If for no other reason you have to leave to go buy food, you don't want to end up being the type of person who lives on delivery pizza. You just don't want to be that guy. It's just a dark place. It's a really sad, dark place to end up in your life if you're living completely on delivery pizza. You got to leave the house to get the food, if nothing else. Mark Norton, how do you know that the Hulk isn't a bottom? If that's true, a man or a woman with a strap-on could fuck the Hulk. Inadequate answers indeed, sir. You're right, I hadn't considered that, but I'll just make this suggestion. Look at how big the Hulk is. And just imagine how massive that guy's cock is when he's all hulked out. That thing has got to go somewhere. That's all I'm saying. Maybe he does prefer to be a bottom most of the time. I'm just saying. I don't know. Maybe he tops from the bottom. I don't know. That dick's got to go somewhere. Coexistential. Hey, Steve, I know you're a big Charlie Chaplin fan. I can do the classic Chaplin tramp walk faster than my girlfriend can run. No, she's not fat. She's just short and in high heels. Also, when I look back at her, she looks like a cross between Adam Sandler, Waterboy era, and Jim Carrey, Dumb and Dumber era, only cute and in high heels. Should I dump her? The problem with that is, what other woman will have you? You have to consider these things. I would say no, don't dump the cute, short Adam Sandler, Jim Carrey girl. I would say keep her around. Teach her the Chaplin walk. Don't just use it to make yourself feel superior to her. Teach her. Help her. And maybe she can teach you some things, too.
Like how to be a human being.
Oh, honey.
I'm short and I wear high heels.
And you can do a Chaplin walk like nobody's fucking business.
And no one had to teach me.
Nope,
babe.
no one.
Take that!
Right over there. On that note, that's it for the questions this week. Before I get out of here, I'm going to do a shout out as always, and the shout out this week goes to Mathew Steele, also known as Organetics. That's his YouTube username, but Mathew Steele is what he goes by. That's his name. It's probably a good reason why he goes by that. He has an excellent channel. He also hosts a show on the New Covenant group. My pals over there at the New Covenant group. He's a really sharp guy, really smart, makes great videos. He made a really good video in response to the BuzzFeed article that I also made a response video to, the 22 messages for evolutionists from creationists. Mathew did his own response video to that, answering the 22 questions, and answered a lot of them in different ways than I did, or that other people who did those sort of response videos, but also in like a very short, pithy, concise way, and he's just great. And that video is excellent and well worth a look. And he, in general, is worth your attention. So check out Mathew Steele's YouTube channel and check out his show every week on the New Covenant Group's programming on their YouTube channel. I think I'm going to be on his show pretty soon. I think I might be on his show coming up this weekend. So check me out on there this weekend, and check out Mathew Steele's stuff. It's excellent. Well worth your attention. That's it for me this week. I am going to get out of here, and I will be back next week to do this again, all over again, provided, of course, that you guys ask me some questions. I think my speech is not quite rambly and jumbled enough. Just excuse me one moment. That is better. Provided, of course, that you guys ask me some questions. So please leave a comment on this video. Ask me a question for next time. Ask me anything about anything. Anything you could possibly have the slightest bit of interest in hearing me express an opinion on. No subject is too serious. No subject is too silly. Ask me anything about anything, and I will answer as many of your questions as I can next time. So until then, you guys take care. I will see you next week.